Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&As, so let's go ahead and knock this out. Alright, first question. Jason, haven't trained deadlifts in forever, was on mostly calisthenics. I think I strained an intercostal muscle doing these, worked up to a max 3 times each week. After 2 months of this, my body finally gave up and I snapped something up. Made good gains though towards my old numbers, nowhere near still, laughing my ass off. How do I go about training while this heals? It doesn't hurt much to breathe, but I can't picture deadlifting heavy next week to be sure. It sounds like you need to chill with the way you're doing your deadlifts. If you've gone from doing just calisthenics to hitting a max deadlift 3 times a week, that's ridiculous. You need to be working with sub-maximal work for a little bit of reps. You know, even if it's triples, even hell, if even it's singles, do several singles. I wouldn't even go over 85% of your probably your max. You know, again, you haven't built up all the support musculature to go into a heavy deadlift. I mean, calisthenics are well and good, and I like a lot of bodyweight exercises, particularly weighted, but that may not prepare your core and everything else for the loads of serious deadlifting. You need to build your deadlift up progressively. I mean, the intercostal is going to heal, so you might need to come in and deadlift really, really light while you let that heal up. Get back into the groove of things, but don't come in and do a max effort deadlift training style if you're not a very advanced lifter who knows what they're doing. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. I don't even recommend people take deadlifts to failure, even if you're going to do rep work. So, you know, come in and do something like maybe some triples with maybe 80% of your max. You know, build to a heavy triple, or do some volume triples, or even to a heavy 5-rep set, depending. You know, there's a lot of programs, including some of mine, that have you do that. But don't come in and start hitting maxes on a deadlift like that at a high frequency when you haven't built a base. It's going to bury you. You're going to get hurt. This is exactly what you saw. You pulled a support muscle. All right, next question. All right, and this one's from my bro Austin Slater. Awesome dude right there. Lots of talk of a minimum weekly volume needed for hypertrophy from Israetel, Lyle McDonald, the recent 45 sets a week debate, etc. Is there a set point you believe needs to be hit in order to maximize hypertrophy? In all honesty, I mean, this talk of 45 sets a week, I'm sorry, that should not be anywhere near necessary to even maximize hypertrophy. I'm not saying someone going beyond 10 or 15 sets might not have the potential, but for a lot of people, this is going to be a ridiculous amount. And again, I understand if your profession revolves around it. I take the view that Lyle McDonald does. Lyle McDonald kind of takes that view of if you can maximize your growth off of 12 or 15 total sets, that it really seems silly to do more than that if you're not necessarily going to get a benefit from it. And I can understand people who are maybe competing in something to where their profession revolves around it completely just wanting an insurance policy, and as long as they can recover from it, no harm, no foul. But I think for the overwhelming majority of people, that's just ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. And that's even for me, someone who trains at home, has a home gym, and technically I'm a professional YouTuber. I mean, I make a decent living doing this, and even I don't do that because again, I don't see the merit. I don't see the benefit. And I think people get ridiculous with this. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say, other than in a few rare cases, depending upon certain training styles, I seriously doubt the majority of people are going to stimulate any more muscle growth going beyond maybe 15 to 20 sets a week. I think for most people, that's probably about your threshold. And I think for most people, even 10 quality sets, you know, 10 quality sets for any given muscle, if they are taken to a pretty far threshold, I think could probably give you 90% of your growth potential easily. So I think this whole debate gets really ridiculous at a certain point. And I'm not saying it isn't something we should discuss, but I think the point of diminished return starts to happen enormously, probably somewhere in that 10 to 15 set range, and maybe up to about 20 after that. I just can't envision it really being worth 99% of people's time, other than a few rare individuals. All right, next question. Oh, this is from Ryan Key. He's got a little smaller YouTube channel. Recently started following me a while back, it looks like. Hey, boss, I have a very important question. I've seen a lot of doctors bring up the importance of stimulating the enzyme called AMPK for longevity and reduce deep fat, which is one of the Most dangerous health risk. I read that docs recommend natural sources, including green tea, turmeric, berberine, metformin for stimulating this enzyme. What are your thoughts, Coach? Metformin? God, no, man. There's been a lot of health problems associated with metformin. It's also known as glucophage. I'm actually very familiar with that substance because it's actually for when I was first in the iron game early on, a lot of bodybuilders and athletes were abusing the hell out of that substance. And no, it's just not something you want to take if you're not prescribed it specifically and need it. Trust me on that. But look, as far as stimulating this goes, I think some of this is ridiculous. I don't use any of this stuff when we talk about deep fat. Like, they were shocked on my DEXA scans that my visceral fat was extremely low, very, very low relative to my body fat. Even when I was over 20% body fat, my visceral fat was well below the healthy range. And that's what we're talking about with deep fat. You know, here's what I'm going to say with that. You really and truly want to get your deep fat low. Don't abuse a bunch of drugs. Don't abuse alcohol. Don't abuse refined sugars. Get plenty of fiber in your diet and exercise, and eat a balanced diet. Even if you're bulking and gaining body fat, if you do those things, you're still going to keep your visceral fat fairly low. And as far as this other stuff goes, there are plenty of people that have cultures with extreme longevity who don't mess with any of this stuff. I think at this point we're getting into complete nonsense and rubbish. Again, this is stuff that it's just theoretical, that a few doctors are saying, hey, I think this might help, but they don't have credible data to support this. And so at a certain point, I'm going to just laugh it off and say that's silly. Look, if you want to live a long time, resistance train, do cardio, eat a balanced, healthy diet, don't get too fat, don't smoke cigarettes, don't abuse alcohol. It really isn't that complicated. All right, next question. Hey Jason, you say you can get big and strong off 1 to 2 work sets for your main lifts and make progress. Obviously it's going to take a bit longer, but would you eventually get to maximum size doing that? Would that be enough volume to get there eventually? If your exercise selection is diverse enough, what I would tell people, look, you can get away with 1 to 2 set training with a pretty good frequency as long as you're going all out heavy and picking the right lifts. If you've got enough lift selection, if you have to. Because sometimes your lifestyle puts you in that situation. Let's say you only have, because of your life or whatever, you can only get to the gym for 30 minutes 3 times a week. Well, I would recommend doing an all-out set of squat, deadlift, bench, overhead press, maybe weighted pull-ups, and get the hell out. You can make gains doing that. Absolutely. But are you going to maximize your potential? No. But again, if you were forced to do that for 6 months or a year, due to something going on in your lifestyle. Maybe you have a new baby, right? Maybe you're working a 60-hour-a-week job and you got a new kid there or whatever, and you're going through all of that and you don't have the time and recovery to handle more than that. You could come in and make gains. You could come in and do one all-out set of 5 big lifts and get the hell out of the gym and be in and out in 30 minutes, right? You could do that and actually make gains, no doubt. But is it going to maximize your potential? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But my point is that you can get away with it for a while if you have to and still make some progress. Now, a noob, you could tap out your noob gains doing that, absolutely. But an advanced lifter, probably not. Probably not. All right, next question. Hey, Jason, do you have any thoughts on professional arm wrestling? Most of these guys have massive forearms, which makes me think most people don't maximize their forearm development. I'm not even sure what I'm asking here. Anyway, thanks, Coach. Just got your shirt, and it's sick, by the way. Hey, man, I appreciate your support and buying one of my shirts, bro. Much appreciated. As far as that goes, I think what we need to think about here, yeah, a lot of people don't maximize their forearm growth, but I mean, a lot of that has to do with people doing straps for everything, not enough pulling, everything else. Like, how many people want to do weighted pull-ups every workout? How many people want to do deadlifts all the time without straps? How many people will, do all that stuff? Right? That's a big part of it. But what you also need to think about is that the people who are going to be the best arm wrestlers in the world probably have a genetic potential for being the best arm wrestlers in the world. I would go out on a limb and say that people who have more muscle fibers to start with in their forearms, right? And maybe people who have certain leverage advantages in the length of their forearms, which is going to allow them to be more stocky and fill out more. Those are probably the people who are going to make the best arm wrestlers. So you kind of see the point there. We're falling into that, we start looking at stuff like, man, all these top power lifters have really big glutes. Well, that's true, but maybe guys with more glute muscle have the genetic potential to be the world record holders in the squat and the deadlift. You know, it's the same thing when you're talking about a sport like arm wrestling. And I'm not saying there's not some truth to that. I do think most guys do not develop their grip strength or their forearm size close to its max compared to a lot of other muscles. I'm not going to disagree. I think that's true. But you need to also look at the potential genetics. Again, the best arm wrestlers in the world probably have a genetic predisposition for certain hand and forearm structures and muscle fiber distribution and total muscle fibers there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the best at what they do. They wouldn't be beating everybody else if they weren't gifted in regards to the muscles and leverages involved in their sport. So you have to look at that also. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 3.